Oh my god, what's up everybody, David here, and today we're going to be checking out the brand new Druminator from Audio Assault. The Druminator is a drum sampling plugin that has a few tricks up its sleeve. Aside from the actual drum samples themselves, this plugin comes with a full suite of EQ, effects, and reverbs, and just overall mixing tools to help you craft your drum sound all inside of one single plugin. So let's get straight into the review and check out how it sounds. Now the drums in that clip are the kit that I made and mixed using only Druminator. And what we're going to do now is we're going to solo the drums and check out each of the preloaded presets. Let's do it. Now let's take a look at how the plugin works. So as far as the interface goes, Druminator is pretty self-explanatory. On the main screen you have your simple drum auditions where you can click on each drum and see how they sound, and then also change the snare and the kick samples. And of course you have your presets at the bottom. On the mixer screen you have obviously faders for each close mic and the room and overhead mics. You have panning controls for each close mic, and then you also have some width controls on the overheads in the room, which is pretty cool. You'll also find some room options on the snare and the kick, as well as some snare and kick triggers. On the EQ tab, again very self-explanatory, you have a low and a high cut, one high band, two mid bands, and one low band. The effects tab is loaded with cool effects such as a compressor, saturation, transient shaper, a punch knob, and a clip knob. And finally you have your reverb section, which gives you a lot of control to perfectly shape your sound. Now you're probably wondering why I didn't walk you through the DAW to show you the sounds and features like I would normally do in a review like this, and that's because I couldn't. So far my experience with this plugin has been pretty bad actually. What I've mainly experienced is that it is ridiculously unstable. I shit you not, in the process of this review I've probably had to restart my DAW about 30 to 40 times because Druminator keeps crashing on me. And this happens under normal usage. Maybe I'm just auditioning a drum sound, maybe I'm moving a fader in the mixer or a knob in the EQ, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, it just crashes. So I restart the DAW, load up Druminator again, and it might work for a minute or so, but then it crashes again. Sometimes after restart, I would load up the plugin again, and then I would click once inside of Druminator and it would immediately crash. It didn't even work for a few seconds. Literally one click would make it crash. Now as far as my setup goes, I'm using Sonar Platinum just like normal. Everything is completely up to date, and the project itself had 6 tracks in it with very minimal mixing. You got one Druminator track, one bass track, and 4 guitar tracks, so I'm pretty confident that it wasn't my CPU being overworked. Not to mention, I've had no computer issues until I got Druminator, so yeah, after fighting the plugin and restarting about 20 to 30 times, I was finally able to try out every portion of Druminator, get a decent drum sound, and finish my demo track. By then I was pretty frustrated and decided to stop for the day. The next day I sat down intending to do the walkthrough portion of the review, and long story short, I couldn't get through it because once again it kept crashing. At that point, that's when I noticed I'm actually using the VST2 version of the plugin, so I thought, you know what, that might be my problem, let me try the VST3 version. So after crashing a few more times, I was finally able to copy the MIDI, load the preset, and switch over to the VST3 version of the plugin. And then that started crashing. By this time, I couldn't even get into the project. Before, I was able to use Sonar with no problem, and it wasn't until I actually started working inside of Druminator that it would actually crash. But this time, as soon as I even opened the project, I got an error message and it crashed immediately. I couldn't do anything. So at this point, I'm ready to say fuck it and give up. But I was like, you know what, let me try one more time. Let me triple check this to make sure that it's not an issue on my end before I do a review saying that the plugin has a bunch of problems. So I restart my computer, load up a completely blank project, and insert Druminator, the VST3 version, and then 3 clicks in, it crashes. So yeah, I am definitely done with that, and that's why I didn't do a walkthrough like what I normally do in all of my other reviews. Now, I'm pretty realistic about this. I understand that it's a new plugin and sometimes you just have bugs. Sometimes it's unavoidable and it'll probably be fixed in a later update. So I'm not going to let this cloud my judgment in this review. But at the same time, I thought it was pretty important for me to tell you that for me right now it's pretty much unusable. And that has made making this review incredibly frustrating. So enough of that, let's talk about the overall sound. The kick and the snare are pretty dope actually, and I can definitely see myself using these samples to aid a live drum recording. As far as everything else, it's not the worst thing I've ever heard, but it's also not the best. And then it's also not the most realistic thing I've ever heard, but it's also not the worst. I felt like other than the kick and the snare samples, everything else was just kind of average, honestly, but let's talk about a few things that I really liked. So where I think the plugin really shines is in the effects and reverb sections. In the effects you have a compressor, a saturation knob, a transient designer, a clipper, and they've even included their punch knob from their standalone punch plugin in there as well. The compressor is pretty standard and just easy to use. The drive adds some really great saturation and just overall size and presence to the sound. The transient designer really allows you to shape your drum sound, and the clip and punch control really just bring the drums to life and really make it pop in the mix. What's also great about the effects is, with the exception of the punch and the clip control, everything includes a mix knob so you can easily achieve some parallel processing. I really enjoyed cranking the drive and then dialing back on the mix knob to retain some of that natural sound. I really got some cool tones with that. And side note, I think I might actually go buy that punch plugin because it's like 10 bucks and I just really liked what it did here. And then you have the reverb, which gives you a lot of control over things like width, density, early reflections, pre-delay, and it gives you EQ options as well. Overall, the effects and the reverb sections were very well thought out, and I feel like that's where I had the most fun when working with Druminator. There's also a few other things that I really liked. First is that the EQ, effects, and reverb sections all have a master fader so that you can process the drums as a whole. That was really smart to include, and it definitely makes a big difference, so I was pretty stoked to see that. Second is the presets. You're able to upload your presets to Dropbox directly from the plugin to then share with your friends, which is pretty cool. And lastly, I really dig just the simplicity of the plugin. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to use Druminator. You can just jump right in and start making cool noises. Now let's go over some stuff that I didn't like. Now this might be a small gripe, but you have to individually enable the EQ, effects, and reverb inside of the mixer. I feel like it would just be way easier to just skip that step completely because by default these aren't enabled. So multiple times I found myself in full mixing mode, changing EQ settings, wondering why it's not making a difference, only to remember, oh, I have to go back and enable it in the mixer. Same thing with the mix knob for effects and reverb. They default at 0, so you start making all these changes, wondering why nothing's happening, and then you remember, oh, I have to go back and turn up the mix knob. It just seems a bit counterintuitive. I also found myself wishing there was individual volume for each tom, because right now they're just kind of lumped into one single fader, and I felt like I needed to turn stuff down, but you just don't really get that option. And lastly, I had a hard time with realism here. Even with randomizing velocities and even with manual editing, everything always just sounded a bit robotic. So Druminator definitely has its ups, but it also has its downs as well. Right now it's on sale on the Audio Assault website for $9 until I don't know when actually. I didn't really see a date on the website, so I don't know. While it's on sale for $9, definitely grab it 100%. Like I said earlier, the kick and the snare samples are solid, so that's worth it in itself. Once it goes up to 50 bucks, I guess that really depends on you. You're not gonna get crazy realism here, so if you're looking for something for maybe demoing or just simple songwriting, then Druminator is awesome. However, if you're looking for realism or maybe something for a full release, I'm just saying, man, Get Good Drums and Steven Slate are only $50 away. While they might not have the EQ or the effects or the reverb or anything like that, they also have about 3 times the amount of samples and they sound a lot more realistic, especially Get Good Drums. So it all just depends on what you need and what you're looking for, but I would say if you're looking for something for a full release, spend the extra 50 bucks and get Steven Slate or Get Good Drums. I think you'll be a lot happier with those. And that's where I'm going to end it for today, guys, but I want to know, what did you guys think of Druminator? Let me know down in the comments below. And of course, do not forget to like and subscribe. There's new videos every single week and you don't want to miss any content. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is David, and I'll see you next time.